Welcome everyone to Already Cancelled. I am Peter, that is Tara, and we talk about TV shows here. The year is 2021, and the name of the show is Babylon 5. This is Season 2, Episode 15. It's called And Now for a Word. So, full spoilers for the episode as always. And this episode takes the, I guess, mockumentary. It sounds a bit too comedic, I suppose, perhaps given the tone of it, but we follow a news special for a show called 36 Hours. The idea being that the journalist spends 36 hours in a location or with a group of people, and in this case it's going to be Babylon 5, obviously. And we start with an intro from this reporter. She has a conclusion. There's even a fake ad at one point, which we'll get into. But it covers a crisis that happens on the station over the course of this 36-hour period. But the presentation is a little bit different because we have this framing device of the reporter interviewing people, asking questions. So we get, the sit-down interview styles and all the rest of it. Tara, what did you think of And Now for a Word?
I thought it was a pretty fun gimmick for an episode. It got a lot of interesting interviews from our characters and how they really feel about certain events. Plus, we have the Centauri-Narn war going on right outside of Babylon 5 and some really tense decision-making on Commander Sheridan, So, yeah, pretty good episode.
Yeah, well, I thought it was good too. The interviews range from being very funny to very insightful and very plot heavy, good character drama, and then
to Dr. Franklin.
Yeah, then there was whatever Franklin did, where he just got very serious and depressing for some reason. I get that he's working on a lot of near-death victims of an explosion when he says this, but he just goes into this story about his friend accidentally sending himself out of the airlock, and then slowly describes the process of someone dying in a vacuum.
I know, Jesus.
As the camera slowly tracks into a close-up. It is very, very odd. Very, very, very odd. Just right there, about 15 minutes into the episode, there's just this monologue from Franklin. It's something.
I mean, I know it was really serious and stuff, but it was hard not to chuckle.
Yeah, I almost started laughing.
I'm just like, Franklin, what are you doing, man?
Because there's some other dead serious ones later on in the episode, but they're dead serious in the context of what's going on in the plot and what's going on with the characters and the story we're building. His is just randomly just a story about his friend and how dangerous space is.
It's not funny to make fun of blowing people out of an airlock, all right? Stop doing it, everyone.
Yeah, that's how
it was like his PSA.
That's how he ends it. He ends it by saying, people joke about spacing people or sending them out the airlock. I don't think it's very funny. That's how it ends. And I'm like, what the hell was that? Where did this come from? So I want to give a shout out though to the pretty boy on the command deck, because his interview was cracking me up. And he's not
this was really funny.
He's a character who's not really a character in so much as he's there to sort of be on the comms as he's taking orders.
Yeah, he's a recurring extra.
Yeah. But Ivanova just standing in the background, sort of watching him, and the way he
judging each answer.
Yeah, and the way he answers the question, what's it like to work here, and he says that, he describes the people he works with, and the way he kind of looks down to his bottom left, which is sort of over to where Ivanova is, before he answers with the fake happy, I won't get yelled at for this answer. Right.
No, everyone's here, perfect temperament. Haven't heard anybody get mad about anything ever. Yeah. And she's just kind of I don't know, rolling around on her toes, okay, yeah, good answer. I approve. No one's going to get too loud after this.
Which extended to when the reporter comes to talk to Ivanova herself and calls her Ivanova.
Yeah.
Which is doubly funny because I think I might have said it that way before I learned how to pronounce her name way back at the start. And I get the impression that enough people mispronounced it in front of either the actors or Straczynski himself that this was a joke that he put in the show because too many people just mispronounce her name. But what got me...
I like that she doesn't acknowledge it anyway. She's like, no, I get this all the time. It's not a big deal. I deal with that at my job too because I have to introduce myself every day as Tara, and people go, Sarah, and I just like, yep.
Tara's not
fine.
a weird name though. What the?
Yeah, but we wear a mask. People don't know, so
Okay.
And it's not really a big deal because people don't. I'm never going to see them again, hopefully. So if they get it wrong, like whatever. It's close enough.
I'm just imagining you saying, "Hey, my name is Tara," and then someone going, "Oh, like in Tomb Raider," and then just like continuing the conversation. So no, what got me about this scene though was the way she described Ivanova though at the start. Is she goes, "So who runs the station?" Well, when it's not the captain, it falls to Commander Ivanova. The perky, she was perky. I'm like, who's ever described Ivanova as perky?
Yeah.
Ivanova will slam you through a table. That ain't perky.
Start bar fights.
Start bar fights, yeah. Or grill
Throw
you
you out of a window.
Throw you out of a window, yes. And you have to just assume that she knew the pool would be there upon the landing of that said psychop. So no, we'll get to the actual crisis in the plot. I'm just going through some of these silly, and I say silly in a fun way. I don't mean that in a bad way. They're entertaining, and some of them do a good job of like just kind of establishing where these characters are right now. Like Garibaldi's is not as memorable, but it is actually quite simple. Where he talks about how he'd love to have a quiet day, but he wants to make a difference, and it's just kind of him saying that sort of thing. We have the dock worker from the strike episode from last season.
Yeah, the union guy.
Yeah. Who doesn't seem to remember that as big of a deal as it was. He just kind of like shrugs it off here as like, there was like some budget cut attempts last, the same old thing. And I'm like, that was a whole thing. You went on strike and there was like threats from
yeah.
all sorts of places. That was a big deal at the time.
That was a big episode.
Yeah. I do like them bringing him back in though for this little cameo, just as like a.
Yeah, I was happy to see him.
Yeah, it's
he was memorable enough to be like, I remember this guy.
It's the idea that the station's like another, working place. So there was a nice.
Is that the episode where we meet Bester?
No, because the guy in that episode wasn't a psychop. It was like a lawyer or something from Earth or whatever.
You're right. Yeah, never mind.
Yeah. Now Bester was the one with Ironheart.
Oh.
There you go. I was trying to remember his name there. Ironheart.
Another memorable episode.
Oh, of course. Very memorable episode. So you had him. I actually kind of loved a couple of Ivanova's. So the end of Ivanova's like first little interview that we've already talked about a little bit, where she just kind of like gives some stock answers to who she is and what her life is. At the end of it, the reporter says, "There has to be more to your story than that." And Ivanova goes, "Yes," and it just cuts. And then later on, and we'll get to this separately because I think it's more impactful at the end. But when they're asking everyone, like, does Babylon 5 serve a purpose? Should we have Babylon 5 going forward? And as it's jumping around everyone's fairly in-depth answers of varying lengths, it just cuts to Ivanova going, "Yes," and then it just cuts again. Women of few words, and it cracked me up.
Very practical Russian, I guess, is what she would probably say.
Yes. Very Russian over. Yeah. But Sheridan's interviews, I think, obviously have a lot of interesting stuff in there. I particularly enjoy when she's questioning about him. He used to be stationed on a ship. He used to even captain a ship, and talks about all this. And he talks about coming here. That's all very interesting. But what I particularly like, though, is after she shows some of the interview of like the senator, whoever it is, back on Earth, who's a very sort of sleazeball, like sort of humming and hawing and kind of like saying, "Yeah, Babylon 5 was a nice idea, but is it really necessary?" But he specifically talks about how, the reason for it in the first place was to try and avoid any further wars with the Minbari or any other races, so it was like this to try and avoid that. But we've made so many technological advancements in 14 years, which, by the way, see when I was younger, 14 years seemed like a long time. Now I'm like, 14 years is nothing. The last 14 years of my life went by like that. That's like...
Yeah.
So that's not a long time.
Yeah.
But he talks about how we'd probably win now. We'd probably do a much better job fighting any other race now. And I loved when it cut back to Sheridan, and she sort of like, obviously she showed him or told him about these answers, and Sheridan like really gets upset and kind of makes this point of saying, Every time we lose a war, it's not that long before people who weren't actually in the war start talking about how we should have won that, and if I was fighting, we would have won it. And people forget and seem to think, but let me tell you this right now, if we get into a conflict with the Minbari, we would not do that well. We're not in a good place for it. We have not recovered. And hell, if we try and fight the Vorlons with their advanced stuff, and we just got examples of their advanced technology just a couple of episodes ago, and she asked to remind us, well, but Captain, we didn't lose the war. The Minbari surrendered, and
right,
the way
which
sorry, I was going to say the way he kind of hesitates and stops himself from arguing and just sort of saying yes, of course. It said so much about how he thinks, because he's right. They didn't win the war. Minbari just mysteriously decided to surrender. It's not a victory in any way, shape, or form.
Right, yeah. But it shows you that the media is still selling it as a victory. People are proud. Earth is proud of this victory.
Mm-hmm.
They according to them, they didn't know why they surrendered, but anybody can spin it to whatever they want. Then, it could be, well, they surrendered because of the might of Earth Force, or something.
Yeah, it's propaganda, right? That's what it is. And I love these answers so much here because I feel like it told me so much about how he views human beings aren't in a strong place where we can take on every comer. This is not who we are right now.
And he reminds her, this isn't just about, the Minbari. It's about other races, too, like the Vorlon, which we absolutely would not win a war against. So maybe it's good that we still have this open communication and this neutral territory where people can come and other species can send their ambassadors and we can negotiate and move forward peacefully. Sounds like a pretty good idea.
Yeah, it's really good stuff. And when he's given his answer at the end about, if we should still have Babylon 5, he gives this great speech about how, we've stumbled in recent years. We've stumbled by, the war starting. We stumbled at the death of the president. We've been stumbling, time and time again over the last few years. And when you stumble enough, you start just watching your feet, trying to watching your steps. But what we really should be doing is keeping our eye on the horizon, and that's kind of the purpose of Babylon 5. It's a really nice little speech that I kind of understood the sentiment he was trying to get, is that you become obsessed with the steps rather than the actual destination you're trying to get to. And it's, I don't know, I found his speeches, Sheridan is actually a very good spokesperson when he's put in a platform like this to kind of sell the idea. They've done a good job of building him up over the season so far, I think. The standout interview, though, I'm staying away from Londo and G'Kar because they're plot heavy. But Delenn interview.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, obviously, it's interesting from a mythology point of view. Her just describing the planet, of Minbar, is kind of interesting.
Their buildings are made out of crystal because there's so much crystal on their planet. Well, these giant crystal formations.
More specifically, though, it's not just that they're built out of crystal; it's that they're carved into the crystal.
Yeah.
So
they just have mountains of crystal,
which is very, Superman, and. Particularly the movie Superman, which portrayed Krypton as just this crystal and ice planet. But she says that the quarter of the planet is the north ice cap, which is... So we get this visual, a little hologram, but in your head you're thinking about just how weird that would... if you think of Earth, but the entire... it was like a hat, it's like an ice hat on Earth. That's how it would look from space.
It sounds like, she said in the spring when the lights or colors are just right, it sounds like they have a aurora borealis type of event that happens mixed with the crystals. It's like living in a kaleidoscope planet. It sounds awesome.
Yeah, it's all really interesting stuff. But then the reporter starts hitting her with the hard questions of you don't look like a normal Minbari though, and she has to explain it. And she brings up the photograph of her from season 1 and says, you look very different just a year ago. And then says, how do you think the loved ones of people who died in the war only 14 years ago would feel about you taking on their face? And Delenn gets proper choked up. It's a really... This is the thing, obviously the guest stars and the sort of extras who get the little moments in this are really funny, and they add a little bit of the texture of the station, but it's the main actors here who all get to perform. They really do shine in these scenes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, she's kind of her own little Babylon 5. She's done this, she's made this sacrifice in order to become closer to, so that their two species can become closer and have this understanding and peace. But she still has just gone through this transformation, and basically everybody is rejecting her and telling her that she should be ashamed of what she's done. And I think she's just overwhelmed by all this rejection when, her intentions were so noble.
Yeah, people fear change. I mean, and yeah, and the reporter, I think she presents this in a very confrontational way because she wants a reaction. She is right in the sense that I do assume that people who did have loved ones who died in that war with the Minbari probably won't feel too kind about the idea of a Minbari becoming part human and sort of trying to blur the lines of what being human and Minbari are. Like, they probably would be very offended by that and upset. But what's more important here, the future of like stopping and like gaining everlasting peace and stopping all future death, or obsessing over the death that's already happened? Like, ultimately, you have to look at, as Sheridan says, you have to look at the horizon. You have to go forward. And that's okay because he still remembers how to dance or something.
You're mixing up your stories.
That was the joke. I mean, honestly, maybe if you do want to compare those two stories, maybe that's the point. Is like, let's say he said that to Londo, and Londo hit him back with his little dance like metaphor. The response that Sheridan, I think, might say to Londo is, "Well, we're not asking you to dance. We're asking you to walk."
Maybe JMS is just a foot guy.
Like Tarantino, he's just at his feet, but more on a metaphorical level. He doesn't like showing feet. He likes to think about feet.
Yeah, we haven't really seen feet in this show, like at all.
No,
but he likes to write about them.
Yeah. Okay. A lot of feet talk.
Hey, Jesus was into feet.
Hey, it's network TV. You can't show filthy feet on screen. You can talk about feet, but R-rated movies like Tarantino, you can show the feet. That's your X-rated feet content.
Yeah.
So no, I thought Delenn's interview was particularly well performed. Obviously, Londo and G'Kar, like before we get to the conflict itself, but G'Kar's I thought was wonderful, because this is the one that I sort of like earlier on when I was saying how there's another really sort of serious dark one that's really depressing, but it doesn't feel like it's just out of nowhere and forced. G'Kar's is the one that I was thinking of, because G'Kar's story is horrific, and we kind of get like the two sides of what the history is, and it's kind of this thing, because it's a fictional show and because these are fictional races, we don't actually know for sure necessarily if it's like, I mean, G'Kar's sounds more real given everything we know about these two characters and given what we've heard about these two histories, but there is the possibility that maybe both sides of sort of are more on the extreme end where there is actually a truth in the middle somewhere.
But we also know that like the Narn were definitely oppressed by the Centauri.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, there's so no
it's
doubt
not that much, right? So we expect his story to be horrific.
That's the thing. They've made G'Kar so sympathetic at this point, and he already was. Like that scene where he broke down when the episode The War Started was absolutely wonderful. But here he just talks about how the death of his father, how his father was a servant in a Centauri house, and because he spilled some alien coffee on the mistress of the house, he was hung up in a tree for 3 days and left to die. And he went out to see him, and his father,
when he was a pouchling,
barely a pouchling, I think was the exact phrase.
I love that they're kangaroos.
But he went out to see him despite his mother's wishes, and his father said something to the effect of, I hope you'll make me proud and, be a fighter and be everything that I couldn't be. And, it really adds a lot to, like, G'Kar's, like, strive for, not just equality, but, like, actually not being something. Because he talks about how, we were a primitive race, and it's 150 years ago, so think about how much our technology's advanced 150 years. So even though they have spaceships and shit now, like, like they probably were much more primitive 150 years ago. So this idea of like Centauri coming in, offering like, oh, we can improve everything, but then essentially just dominating, taking over. It was a wonderfully written scene that I can't really do justice with just describing what he said.
He said like, cause I think the reporter was like, well, why do you think the Centauri did that to you guys? Like, well, why does any like oppressor take over a land? For strategic location and resources, and that's what they took from all of us.
But I think my favorite part of that line is at the very end, where he says, "But most importantly, because they can." It was very poignant, and it's just a wonderful scene that once again kind of, because he says the next day he ran away from home and killed his first Centauri. That was like the end of that.
Yeah, he's such a good actor too. When he says that you're just like on his side, even though we don't know who he killed. It might have just been another boy. It might have been a soldier. It might have just been a civilian.
Because if he's a pouchling, is he killing like a adult Centauri?
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, it's not impossible, but like it would definitely maybe take some sneakiness or a good weapon.
Yeah, it almost makes him seem like he's been restrained this whole show against Londo with a story like that. Yeah. And Londo, I haven't gotten to him yet, but like it's not easy to sympathize with him in this episode because he is working that camera.
The word I was going to use was politicking. He is politicking through and through. The way he is trying to get the sympathy of Earth and Earth Force on the side of the Centauri. Yeah, because even later on when stuff goes down, he tries to frame what the Narn have done as putting Earthlings in danger.
Yeah.
Which is just very slimy, the way he talks about things, and he's like, because we cut to him right after this, because we get G'Kar's horrible story first, right, and it's this tragic thing. He even directly references Earth history by saying never again. You know, he brings it up, which I think, on the one hand, maybe some people would say is a bit too on the nose for him to actually bring that up. But I think what I like about it though is that it shows that he has done his studying. Like he's actually looked into, because he wants Earth to be allies. He's tried to make Earth allies through Sheridan and through Babylon 5. And the idea that, you know, Earth will in some way be brought into this war on one side or the other, at least that's what both sides are hoping, is a very interesting idea. But, you know, we have this horrible story from him. We cut to Londo, and he talks about how, we brought them, you know, we advanced their civilization, their technology, we gave them all these things, and at great expense, but unfortunately, you know, that's why we had to leave. It cost too much. And the report says, so you didn't, like, you know, like
you weren't forced out.
Yeah, he's like, no, if they wanted us to leave, why would we press the issue? You know, and the sad part is that I'd love to think that this is an example of like, okay, we're hearing two very different opinions here, but the way Londo says these things, the way he says, oh, you know, we've altered history enough or something like that, or we've heard enough.
Yeah, he's using propaganda lines.
Yeah, everything he says convinces me he is, and we already kind of, like, the hints we've had from before imply that he is the one that's just lying here, but everything, the body language, the way he says it, the way he's politicking, all of it says to me G'Kar is telling as much of the truth as he can, you know, as much as to his best effort, and Londo is lying through his teeth, and it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking stuff, because we get the crisis of the episode, of course, is that right at the start, a Narn ship fires upon a Centauri ship, and at first it's like,
when they're trying to dock onto Babylon 5, so they're right outside the doors.
Yeah, because could you ask me a question when you were watching it? Is why is there people injured? Because it looked like the ship just blew up. I'm not sure if that was the people on the ship or if that was people at the dock who maybe were just caught in the.
Well, they were all Centauri, the people that were injured.
Were they? Okay, well, yeah, I guess maybe it didn't completely explode then. There was.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, it looked like from the effects that the ship had just exploded. Maybe there was a pod that escaped.
I think that's one of those things where maybe just doing an effect where it doesn't completely blow up is too difficult, so we just kind of have to give them a bit of leeway.
Or maybe they made the effects and were like, well, we want some survivors.
Yeah. So. Hey, look, they did the effects on an Amiga, okay? Like, choices were limited.
They are looking better.
Yeah. I think they're just looking better though, because we're not getting them zoomed in from before.
Yeah, that's definitely.
I think that's the only thing that's different. But
I kind of want to go back and look at some of the early episodes to see if I was being too harsh on the effects, or if it was just the way I was watching it.
Maybe, I don't know.
Maybe I'll check out the Ironheart episode. Get back to you guys.
That's a great episode. You can mock the effects all you want. That was a great episode.
Good to talk or listen to Talia talk about making love to another telepath.
Hot. I'm playing.
Yeah, and then she meets the guy, and they're like, "You guys had this love affair." I don't know.
I'm replaying Mass Effect the Mass Effect trilogy right now because the remaster came out, and there's a lot of talk of telepaths. The Asari, the way they talk about having sex is very along the lines of that. So
no wonder nerds like that game.
So anyway, this is the conflict, and very quickly G'Kar reveals that the reason why the Narn ship fired upon it was because it was carrying weapons, and it was essentially using Babylon 5 as a weapons docking station and trading post kind of thing. And this is against the rules. This is neutral ground. There should be nothing here that's related to the wars happening in terms of, that kind of thing. And Londo's like, no, we were not trading weapons or transporting weapons on the station. We were doing it in ship to ship outside of the station. That should be okay. And probably my favourite line of the entire episode is when G'Kar gets really upset. This is during like a sort of council meeting. And he slams his fist on the table. He says they're doing what they always do. They're doing it again. They're obsessing over the details, so we can't focus on what needs to be done. Which I think thematically plays great into the watching the feet and not looking at the horizon line that comes later from Sheridan. But that's I think I like this because A, it's well written, but B, and the delivery is also very good, but B, because this rang so true to me. Like whenever you're watching, I won't bring up any specific examples, but whenever
no, it's a very political strategy to like argue semantics so that you're distracted from the big picture.
Yeah, like I don't want to bring up anything, but just we have to stop doing X thing because this is causing Y to keep happening, and then the people who for some reason don't want to do that, they'll say, well, technically though, this would mean we infringe upon this right or something, and like that kind of line of thinking. So I don't know, it rang very true for me when G'Kar said this. And again, it made it very hard not to want to side with G'Kar and not with Londo as far as the conflict goes. So that's really good. So as it escalates, eventually Earth rules and Sheridan's like, okay, so we're going to basically say, no, we're going to take your ships. You're not going to be trading these weapons here. You're not doing this. This is not happening. And Londo says, if you do this, we're going to respond. This will be seen as a serious potential act of war. A giant Centauri ship, cruiser, battleship, shows up and says it's going to essentially fire upon anything that tries to go or come from Babylon 5 until they release their ships. It's essentially like an ultimatum. And Sheridan, obviously at first there's a little bit of a standoff, but then Sheridan says, you know what, let's call their bluff. Because if they do fire upon a ship leaving or coming to Babylon 5, it'll bring Earth into the war against them. And as strong as they think they are, and as strong as they might be, they don't want to be fighting a double war.
Yeah, they don't want two fronts.
So we're going to test the theory with an unmanned ship, right? So that it's not actually hurting anyone if it does get shot down. But there's a bit of a tense moment here where it's like, if it shoots on that ship, they're going to expect us to retaliate, because Sheridan's made the warning. Like, we have got our defense grid up, we've got our weapons ready, we are going to fight if you do this. And they don't. And
Babylon 5 has been upgraded.
It's been upgraded, and Sheridan was right. He does call their bluff, and they don't do anything. Unfortunately, as soon as this happens, a Narn warship comes through a jump gate and starts a battle with this Centauri ship. So we actually get this full-on big, almost Star Trek-esque, like two big ships firing beams at each other. At one point, Voneva has to close the blast doors because one of them's.
I like that detail. We've had it before where it's like, oh yeah, they don't have shields. That's cool.
There's just simple metal. Just thick metal is what they've got.
There's a big laser beam coming towards us. Let's close this window. Thank you.
But and then the Narn ship technically wins because it destroys the other ship first, but we find out quite quickly that enough damage was done to it that it basically just falls apart within a minute anyway. So it's which thematically, the idea of mutually assured destruction, that no one's going to win this, that ultimately both are going to just go up in flames. I'm not saying this as a foreshadowing of that, but I think it's at least poking at the idea of there's not going to be a real winner out of this ever.
Yeah, it's just like his like Londo's prophecy that he will die choking G'Kar while G'Kar is choking him.
Yeah, I think because I think you could take that as not being literal. Just that representing.
Well, I mean, yeah. For prophecies, sure.
Yeah. Wait, are you saying prophecies have to be literal?
No.
Okay.
They're always vague. You
Sure.
didn't watch Game of Thrones, okay? I did. I know what prophecies in TV are supposed to sound like.
I tried. Hey, I watched the hit television show Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which had prophecies all the time. The season 1 finale was called Prophecy Girl, okay? And that came way before Game of Thrones. So don't even start me on...
But she is the prophecy, right?
She is the prophecy, yes.
Yeah.
But there's many prophecies. There's the prophecy that Angel will one day become human. That's called the Shanshu prophecy.
Gross.
Shanshu. Anyway, so... do you know what I think is interesting about the juxtaposition of the framework of this episode and then like the conflict that's happening? Is the conflict's actually probably the biggest thing conflict-wise that's ever happened on the station. It's, at least in the context of like Londo versus G'Kar. Like this keeps escalating to the point where they've got ships outside. They're saying that they'll even fight for Earth and Babylon 5 and the human ships if they get involved. Like that's really escalated.
Yeah.
And it's mixed in with this cheesy, not the performance from the actress who's playing the reporter's cheesy, but she's doing some really.
No, she's fine.
She's doing like really intentionally cheesy phrases though, where where she's talking about the alien sector of the ship and how the aliens call the human side the alien sector. She sort of like stares at the camera and just goes to show that beauty is in the eye of the beholder.
She says beauty and beast.
And beast, yes. But she does that a couple of times where she'll have, even at the start where she's introducing the show, she's like, the only thing to expect about Babylon 5 is the unexpected. It's just the really cheesy, thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess it's kind of like a 60 minutes style, 2020 style interview. These are American shows. You probably don't know.
I've heard of 60 Minutes, yeah.
Okay.
It's referenced enough in movies and stuff that I've heard of it.
Okay.
Yeah, and the episode ends, so this conflict happens, and Londo tries to frame it all as the Narn put people from Earth in danger. He's politicking so hard, it's like a little bit sickening. But when they're all asked if like Babylon 5 should still exist, we talked about Sheridan's answer and some of the other ones, but I love that G'Kar's the one, because Londo says yes, like it's still important that we keep communicating, and I'm like, that's rich coming from you.
Yeah, right.
But G'Kar just sort of like shrugs and says, I used to think so, but I don't know, like he's not really like the Narn aren't benefiting much right now. And
No.
we had a whole episode, right after the war started, of like G'Kar trying to get help. And he got a little bit of help at the end, but it was all very unofficial, and we had that whole story, but
Yeah, it's very hush hush.
So yeah, I really hope that they can do something to help the Narn at some point soon. I feel like the G'Kar deserves a win.
Yeah.
He really deserves a win.
Yeah.
I would like G'Kar to have a win. So.
Good episode. Lots going on.
Yes. Well,
and funny moments with Dr. Franklin and the tech guy.
Yeah, yeah, because the Franklin's bit at the end is like, well, if we weren't here, half these people in this room would be dead. That's good enough a reason. Now piss off and get out of my med bay. Yes, well, but there is one more thing to talk about. The commercial.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
The
with the boy from, well, he's in an episode of Star Trek, which I think you'll be watching soon. And he's in Kindergarten Cop.
Oh.
And
I don't know.
There's something else I know him from. I forgot. Pull him up.
Well, I actually pulled up someone else because I wanted to talk about the other guy that I did recognize, who was the Earth Senator dude. That's an actor. He's that guy for sure. He's popped up in a bunch of stuff. I'm just scrolling. He was in Chud for a start.
Yeah. That guy.
You've seen Chud?
I have.
You're familiar
Not
with
as good as the sequel, Chud 2, Bud the Chud, starring Garrett Graham as Bud the Chud, the titular Bud the Chud.
Yes, Garrett
Classic.
Graham. Who's that guy again? What did he do? Was he on Babylon 5?
That is Lord Kiro from Signs of Importance Season 1.
Oh, he's on Starship Troopers. That's where we know him from. Starship Troopers. He's Rico's dad.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That's why I
over in
recognize his
Buenos
face.
Aires.
That's why I recognize his face, because that was so recent we did that. Yeah. Okay, he's also in Home Alone 3, which I have seen, but it's been a long ass time. So
Yeah.
So I want to bring up him. His name is Christopher Curry. So yes. But yeah. Anyway, we need to talk about this ad. So the kid's basically talking to his mom and saying that he thinks he might be psychic. Without using those words, he talks about how he kind of knew his friend was lying and how the kids are being mean to him. And then this psychop just materializes in the room. It's a home invasion, really. The mom doesn't seem that concerned that this man's just beamed into her house.
Yeah, there's no transport
No,
technology. This is just like a special effect for the commercial.
That's just a commercial thing, yeah. There's
and the kid is the kid in the Philadelphia Experiment too, also starring Garrett Graham, Lord Kiro. That's what I know him from. Just the kid who likes Superman and baseball. Not Superman. He likes Wolverine.
What a weird line of connections.
We got to talk about Garrett Graham twice. Good episode.
All right, anyway, the commercial. So the psychop comes in and says, they just don't understand you, little Johnny, but I do. And then he explains that if he is a telepath, and they'll just find out tomorrow, that he will have every bill he ever has paid for the rest of his life, and he'll have a purpose, and he'll be given an important job to do. And then it cuts 2 weeks later, and the little kid looks like he's a member of the Hitler Youth, and his little side,
yeah,
like,
he's got
school,
a slick back haircut.
Yeah. He's got this little side school uniform, and then the cop's still there talking to his mom. I think he's trying to put the moves on the mum, to be honest. Why else is he hanging around the house this long? But he turns to the camera and
Single
says,
mom. She's
true.
Probably into it.
There's no dad. That's true. Yes, she's probably very lonely. And let's be honest, he probably
It's
sensed.
a good role model for little Johnny.
I guess. She probably should.
That could be like future porn, just a psychop materializing into your apartment. It'd be like the pizza delivery or the plumber guy, you know? I don't know. I don't watch porn. Is that not a trope?
I'm just imagining the poor version of the psychop. I'm here to check your psyche. Gonna untangle your neurons.
Hot.
I think that's quite the same ring as pipes, or what the pizza guy says. Sausage, maybe, I don't know.
I don't know.
Your pizza with the extra large sausage or some such. Because sausage that gets put on pieces is cut up. You slice the sausage. It makes no sense. Anyway.
Clearly we don't watch porn.
Yeah, sure. So Psychop Man turns to the camera. It says, and remember, if you know anyone who might be a psychic, or you yourself are a psychic, do the right thing. Call Psychor. And it's like, so this is basically like, again, I mean, I mentioned the Hitler Youth before. I didn't mean to do a double reference to Nazi Germany here, but that sounded a lot like Call the Gestapo. If you if you know anybody who's hiding their psychic abilities, make sure to call them out. Do your duty. Be a good citizen. Yes, if you report them, see something, say something. In fact, we mentioned the Starship Troopers, but the first thought I had at the start of this episode was RoboCop, another Paul Verhoeven film, just because of the news program and the cheesy graphics. It was very, it's kind of Starship Troopers-esque also. Yeah, it was a little bit. Yeah. I mean, Starship Troopers opens with them news reporter on Clendathu. But what I'll say though is that the report at the end of this episode, when she does her outro, she does actually say that she thinks Babylon 5 is something that's worthwhile having. She does actually end on even though it sounds like she's sort of looking for drama the whole time, she does actually end on a point saying, clearly it's a thing that might actually lead to some peace in the long run, and maybe we should give it a chance to, find its footing. Well, she was there during a war, so maybe that's what's doing it. But like, yeah, she does end on a sort of positive note where she sort of endorses the station a little bit, which I thought was a nice touch. In fact, that was the other thing that made me laugh right at the start of the episode when she's teasing the episode, she's introing it. She says, "So over the next hour, we're going to look at a conspiracy involving these people." And I just thought the images they had come up of some of the characters were really funny to me. Like, it was Londo's face. Like,
I know Londo's was not flattering.
Yeah, it was a really funny photo of Londo. I thought it just made me laugh. And the actual plot is quite serious once it gets going, but that made it feel like it was going to be a funny mockumentary
Did you
episode.
think like the names going across the bottom of the screen reminded you of like 90s bonus features?
Oh sure, yeah.
On like a something that was on TV at one point in the 90s. It looked very 90s.
Yeah, it was like they'd call it the making of whatever movie, but once you actually got real making of documentaries, you realised the one they put on TV were just fluff. They had no information. It was just like people selling the movie.
Yeah.
Because you do that. See, if you watch a lot of extras on like Blu-rays or DVDs now, you'll notice that a lot of the movies from the 90s and stuff will have like the made at the time making of for TV as like an extra. But the main making of will be like a new thing they made for the DVD or whatever, which is it'll be a meaty, in-depth thing with chapters where they talk about all the various things. Like, let's take Alien for example. There'll be a bit on creature design, a bit on set design,
the influence
actors.
of it in pop culture. Yeah,
all the parts you think they could talk about. And Alien's a great example. It's like a 3.5-hour documentary. All things considered, it's fantastic. It's well worth the watch. But then in the bonus disc, there's also like, here was like the 30-minute thing they made for TV, and it's just like, this is like so shit compared to the proper thing they made for the box set. This is like just. It's
fluff. Like a young grainy James Cameron just talking about, excuse me, like where you can see your movie, where you can get your tickets. Come see this exciting new picture. Oh well, I guess it wouldn't be James Cameron. It would be a different director.
Yeah,
Blade Runner guy. Can't remember his name right now.
Ridley Scott's the one you try to think of.
Brother of superior director Tony Scott.
That's not entirely true. But
this is his brother.
He is his brother. It was the superior part that I was debating.
Tony Scott's more consistent.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I can't say at the back. The poor guy passed away, didn't he?
Tony Scott was more consistent, I should say.
He had a tragic end, so I don't want to say anything mean about him. And I like his movies, to be fair. Like I enjoy a Tony Scott movie. But anyway, what was the point I was trying to make? I've forgotten the point I was trying to make because you went on a. Oh yes.
Yeah, we were talking just about
Fluffy,
how 90s looking behind the scenes name scrolls.
Fluffy making of things. They'll have like half of it will just be. Why will people like the movie? And they'll go, because it's so scary and exciting. It's like a roller coaster. And it's just like, this is nothing. This is fluffy shit. This is There's no value here. There's nothing of value.
It's just a hype video.
Yes. Whereas, maybe there's a section at the end of the big making of Alien documentary on the thing, but that section will be more about the legacy of it and why it worked and why it resonated with audiences. It's more of like an analysis of like why it's successful, not like, it's exciting and scary and go see it.
It's kind of like how you and I review things. You have the analysis side and I have I liked it. It was a ride.
If you start saying that phrase, then sure, you could take that mantle. Yes, Tara's the fluff. I'm the
analysis.
Yes. I was trying to think of something
the analyst
corresponded with fluff. Like, what's fluffy? A jacket? A fluffy jacket? A fluffy? I don't know.
Kitty cats. They're fluffy, but deceptively fluffy because they're sharp.
I don't have anywhere to go with this, so I think we're done.
Maybe we should stop.
This is with Babylon 5.
Edit this all out.
I'm not going to dare. This is with Babylon 5, Season 2, Episode 15. And now for a word. Interesting snapshot of where all the characters are. A new escalation to the conflict between the Narn and the Centauri. I thought some of the building of the backstory of G'Kar especially was great. Delenn had that great scene. It's good Sheridan stuff actually. Yeah, a lot of the main characters. I'd say Sheridan, G'Kar, Delenn, and to a slightly lesser extent, but still pretty solid, Londo all got really kind of good things out of this episode. And everyone else got some fun moments and, other bits and pieces. So, yeah. Good.
Well, I mean, I don't think Franklin's was supposed to be fun.
Okay, Franklin's was unintentionally hilarious.
He needs a great episode. I hope he has one, because he really needs it. I want to like him.
Some people think spacing someone's funny. I don't think it's very funny.
I don't think it's funny at all. I don't know. It's kind of funny. I mean, they just had that joke where they shot a teddy bear out of the airlock. That was funny.
That's true. Yeah. Yes. But the teddy bear's pupils didn't freeze over.
That's true.
Like we hear about in this horrific story. The first time I ever was in space, I was doing the Earth-Mars run, and could have been more than 17, and my buddy was hiding in the airlock, and I guess he hit a wrong button. So dramatic.
Yeah, it sounds pretty dangerous for kids.
Yeah, maybe like put a cover over the open exterior door button. just a thought. Space station and ship designers.
Yeah, why would you make it so easy for someone to eject themselves out of an airlock?
When I go to close a window on my computer, it'll pop up with a box saying, "Are you sure you want to close without saving?" Like, even that gives me like just a second confirm button. I feel like the airlock on a ship should maybe have like a second a button that says, "Are you sure?"
You're still inside the airlock.
Are you wearing a spacesuit? Because our scanner's saying no.
It's probably just a one big red button. Kids can't refuse that.
Yeah, but the big red buttons are usually for safety. Like, say if you go to like any sort of factory or anything like that, the big
it'll like turn off the gasoline.
Yeah,
or
like the on button's usually more indented and harder to get to, because the whole idea is if there's an accident or something, the red button's really easy to get. Like, it's supposed to be like the quick reaction. You can hit the red button.
Well, movies always tell us it's a red lever. You have to pull the red lever.
Yeah, but
that's how you open and close the airlock.
What I'm saying though is that in the context of a spaceship, red should be the close the door button, not the open the door button. That's what I'm saying.
Well, hopefully ships have gotten an upgrade since the unfortunate incident with Franklin's friend.
Well, I mean, this was before he went to med school, so it's been a while. This is a good 20 years ago probably, but by now. So anyway, thank you for joining us. Let us know what you thought of the episode in the comments below. Do like and subscribe. It's super important that you do. That's how YouTube dictates success, and will help find ourselves some more audience to enjoy the reviews and grow and thrive, and maybe we can see that success on the horizon if we don't look at our feet too much. Tara, why don't you tell them about Patreon?
If you enjoy our reviews, please check out our Patreon page. It's patreon.com/MilesFuzzTV. And if you donate as little as $1 per month, you will get access to bonus episodes of other shows we do, including The Ace, which is where we talk about Garrett Graham films. And if you donate $5 per month, you will get access to these Babylon 5 reviews 1 week early. And some other shows you get a day early and you get to vote. So check it out. Thank you.
Here you go. That is us. So thank you once again for watching or listening. That's probably off a little bit the rails towards the end, but that's okay. That's okay. It's better at the end than in the middle, because they can just.
You never know with us.
You can just turn it off if they're getting annoyed that we're going off in a wild place. But thank you very much once again for watching or listening. But by all means, in the comments, if you would like to sort of like, what does the porn version of the Psy Cop arriving at the house? What's his line? What does he say to the lonely housewife? What's the line of dialogue? Feel free to put your suggestions in the comments.
I'm not going to read those.
Actually, Joe should just open the door. They just stare at each other for a couple of seconds, and then he can go, "No, I'm just happy to see you," without her saying anything.
Stupid. All right, it's done.
Thank you very much. Keep watching Babylon 5. Just don't give away the whole world.